Alasdair. Hello.
Hello, Sam, my darling. How are you?
I'm good. I'm missing you. We're doing another one of the recording online Zoom sessions for the podcast. I'm missing seeing you in person.
I'm missing you too, and you look really charming today in a little Santa hat.
Well, for the listeners' benefits who can't see right now, we are going to be doing a festive episode of the podcast. So I'm sat with my Christmas tree behind me, my Santa hat on. I've made a little bit of effort with the settings. I'm feeling festive. How about you?
It's nice when you make an effort.
Once in a while.
Once in a while. I like as well your hair matches the Santa hat.
There's like a little tinge of red poking out.
A delightful little fiery elf.
That's how I'm feeling.
You're so pretty. How's your week been?
How's my week been? It's been all right. It's been busy. Lead up to Christmas, trying to get everything ready. Finishing work up, juggling life. But yeah, can't complain. How about you?
Mine has been a bit hectic, to be honest. Been organising a Christmas party. Everything's been thrown at it.
Oh, yeah.
There's been rail strikes. There's been colds. There's been
Snow.
So it's going on. It's going ahead, and I will have the night of my life.
You will have such a nice time when you're there. I know it's a stressful lead up to it.
At this point, it's not an office Christmas party anymore. I feel this is my birthday party that all of my colleagues are coming to.
You're like, we're going to have fun.
We're going to have fun. Me and 130 colleagues. I'm going to be so unrelaxed until maybe the third hour, I think. And then it's going to be great.
No, this is the thing. At my work, I'm often throwing wrap parties, and I feel like there's different things that have to happen in the night. Like, you have to get everyone there. There's normally some kind of screening. The food has to come out. And it's not until, like, all those three things have happened, I'm like, and now I can get drunk.
And breathe. And relax. This is my first time organising a party like this, so I'm feeling a little on edge this week. Can you tell?
You'll be fine. No, girl, no. Setting up this podcast was so easy.
What we're doing for the first time ever, because as Doctor Who evolves into a new era on a landmark deal with Disney Plus, we too have invested in one microphone for me so that I can actually do this on my own. And we've even bashed out the ring lights. Those aren't even new investments. Those are just here. So that's pretty major for us. So we're trying visual content this week. Now, dear listener, if there is no visual content, you know what happened, which is that this failed horribly. We did the experiment and it did not work. But we did realise all anyone's actually seen of our faces is essentially that one pic. That one pic on the album art that is also every pic we put everywhere else. So a nice chance for you to see a new side to us. So speaking of festivities, it feels like the right time that we finally talk about the Christmas specials. I
feel like we could have, it's been a long time coming. We did debate whether or not we were just going to jump straight in and do like a full episode and review of a Christmas special. And I was like, no, I'm liking the momentum we're doing. I like to go all the way through series 1. I can't wait to get to the Christmas special at the end of series 1. But also I'm just excited to talk about Christmas specials and festive specials in general. I have some thoughts, I have some feelings, I have things I love, things I maybe don't love. I wanted to jump in.
There's things you don't love about the Christmas specials.
There's a couple things I don't love about the Christmas specials.
I won't believe it. Where's your festive spirit, you Scrooge?
Oh, honestly, I do actually have a Grinch hat as well, but I went for the festive red today.
Hiding your true self.
I'm like the most Christmas spirit person you could ever meet.
So, Sam, in the history of Doctor Who, there were no Christmas specials before 2005, which I find very hard to believe.
No, I know. I mean, seeing as festive specials and Christmas specials are just they're such a staple with new Doctor Who, and I think like viewers like you and me who have entirely grown up with the new era, and obviously I've gone back and watched like old classic episodes, it just feels inconceivable that something as like built into the format of a series of Doctor Who as a Christmas special wasn't there originally. And I mean, we'll touch on it later, but the first ever Christmas the Doctor Who was being aired through had a kind of Christmas special, and I feel like that was a really odd thing that they then never did again. And it's quite interesting to when you look back on.
It's also that Doctor Who is so ingrained in the culture that it's hard to imagine it didn't always have some kind of a slot on the festive period to do something a little bit special. A bit like the way it now is so engraved with children in need.
Exactly, yeah. They always do something for children in need. They often do something for comic relief. Do you feel like, because this is obviously the first year that we're not going to have a Christmas special, which feels like inconceivable. I mean, I was actually distraught when they moved it from Christmas Day to New Year's Day, which is a week's difference, because I feel like there's just something so special about having something on
There's
that.
something
Like,
quite sick and wrong about that.
yeah, completely. I was like, you can't take away the Christmas.
Why did they do it?
I don't know. Well, if I'm honest, I feel like Christmas Day primetime slots are reserved for what the BBC at least consider to be like what people want to watch the most on that day. And let's be honest, Doctor Who viewing numbers have been dwindling in recent years, and I feel like maybe they thought that they could give up that space better to something else. Like
To
the
Mrs. Brown's
Christmas
Boys.
special.
Oh, thank God we cleared room for that, because I know there's been demand for the Mrs. Brown's Boys Christmas special. There'd be outcry if we didn't get that.
The like umpteenth Christmas special of Mrs. Brown's Boys, or they could just replay the Royal Family. I don't know, or Gavin and Stacey. But to be fair, I'd be kind of happy with that one.
I feel like the Mrs. Brown's Boys Christmas special is like, you know, in the same way that like all those candy stores along Oxford Street aren't real, they're all money laundering and everyone knows they're money laundering, and you never see anyone inside them shopping. I've never seen anyone watching. I've never seen anyone watching Mrs. Brown's Boys. I didn't believe anyone's a fan.
Well, this is the thing. I used to love Mrs. Brown's Boys when it was first on, like as a series. I thought it was so funny. I thought it was such a funny concept. I love
bold confession.
And you know what? I'll stand by it. I used to love Mrs. Brown's Boys, and then I got like 2 series in, and I was like, okay, I've had my fill. This is all right. And then they realised that it wasn't funny anymore. But let's sign up. I think that it's something stupid. I think they signed up for like 10 years worth of Christmas specials they'd like agreed to do. It's ridiculous.
Kidding me. What, just contractually?
Yeah, they were just like, you know what, we'll build it into the contract.
Everyone's too embarrassed to stop.
Do you reckon they film it every year, or they just like back catalogued like 8 of them? So in 2029, we'll be watching a Mrs. Brown's Boys filmed in like 2003.
They already did all of them. They've got them, and they're like, they're free now.
Yeah,
I might as well use them.
Well,
it'd be a waste not to.
The actor that plays Mrs. Brown, it's half of their family, I think, that's just playing all the characters. And they were just like, it's so hard to get the family together again.
Right. Christmas telly is great stuff. And there's something nice about as well, the universality of knowing that everyone is sat around at the same time. Everyone's with their families. Everyone's got the quality streets out. Everyone's doing it. There's nowhere else to be on Christmas Day. You know, like that's where everyone is. We're all sat around. We're all feeling a bit full. And we're tucking in for a cozy evening. Exactly.
And I feel like sort of 7, 8 p.m, you're like maybe ready for some more food, not quite sure yet. You've been nibbling the chocolates all time. Turn on the telly, and it's Doctor Who.
Whoa! Oh my God. The countdown to Doctor Who that commenced a good kind of 45 minutes before of like, it's gonna be on!
It's coming on! And like, I remember I think it was 2009, the Christmas ident that David Tennant did, where he'd like sit on the TARDIS and have the reindeer like zhuzhing around, and oh my God, it was amazing.
Yes. They've, that's been doing the rounds on Twitter lately, and I totally forgot that. I think it's The End of Time is his final Christmas special. I forgot that was even a Christmas special.
The end of fun fact, because everyone always thinks of the New Year specials for Jodie Whittaker's Doctor, but the first ever New Year special was The End of Time Part 2. Part 1 was on Christmas Day and Part 2 was on New Year's Day.
Yes, and did you know that they carried on using the Christmas idents right up until Part 2 had aired, and then they removed David Tennant on the reindeer and they just had the sky behind it. So when Part 2 aired, David introduced that ident, and it's his voice over it going, the Time Lords are returning, da-da-da-da-da-da. And then as soon as that episode aired, it goes back to being the normal BBC One introducer, and he goes back to, and now it's time for the 10 o'clock news. And David's gone. They took him out, and he doesn't air again.
Oh, that's horrible, thinking about it that way.
Sad.
Oh, that's
really
so sad.
Little ending.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, it's scary because David really became the face of the show, and so that was quite major.
He became the face of the show. He's becoming the face of the show. What year is it?
I mean, like it or love it, David, I think, is pretty much the definitive Doctor Who, I think, for most people now. Yeah, I agree.
I think definitely Tom Baker was and still is the Doctor Who of a generation, and I think David Tennant, be it the 14th or the 10th Doctor, is Doctor Who of another generation. My generation, I'd say.
I agree. So there's quite a lot of Christmas specials to get through, and we're not going to get through them all tonight, girls. But if you stick with us, we've worked it out. We can probably get through all of them within the next 3 or 4 years at the pace we're going. If you give us a few years, we will eventually catch up.
We did make a calendar looking at all of the Doctor Who episodes. If we do like one a week, a Doctor Who episode, and as it's going, I really like how we're sort of mixing it up with reviewing a Doctor Who episode and then talking about a topic. But if we literally just week by week reviewed a Doctor Who episode, I think that alone, not including obviously the upcoming 60th Shooty series, that takes us to 2026.
I think we're going to be here for quite some time.
You better get used to us, kids.
I know. Now, one of my favourites, may I jump in with one of my favourites?
Absolutely.
And also the highest rated on IMDb, am I just following the popular vote? Maybe. Was A Christmas Carol. So this episode features Matt Smith as the 11th Doctor, Karen Gillan, Arthur Darvill, Michael Gambon plays a character called Kazran, who's a bitter old man who has the power to save Amy and Rory but doesn't want to. We have Katherine Jenkins playing the role of Abigail. And fun fact, my childhood friend plays young Kazran. So
really?
A boy I was at school with called Lawrence was playing young Kazran, and this was like one of the highlights of my whole school life. I was in year 8 and he was in Doctor Who. And
oh my God, how close friends were you with him?
Like good close friends. Like I went to his house and like spent time with him after he'd been filming, and I could not get a word out of him. And he was like, yeah, Matt Smith is so nice. We had such a good time filming. I got to try on the coat, all this kind of stuff. And he was like, he wouldn't tell me anything about the story.
Oh my God, if I was a kid, if I was like a Doctor Who fan as a kid in a school, you best believe, like, BBC, if you hire me now, hello, I would like to send a message to BBC. If you hire me now, my lips are sealed. But if I was in year 8, oh my God, I would be telling everyone.
Absolutely same. I am amazed he did. I think they really made him swear to secrecy, and he took that vow very seriously. But A Christmas Carol is one of the first ones where they really have this jump in quality. And I remember it was the first time as a kid that I remember noticing this kind of cinematic shift. It looks awesome. This episode looks really good, aged very well for 2010, and it's also a very nice, comforting, Christmassy, wintry story. Obviously, there's a bit of a play on oh God, what's it called? A Christmas Carol. Oh my God, it's called A Christmas Carol. How did I go? What's it called? A Christmas Carol. A Christmas Carol.
A Christmas Carol.
It's an awesome, and I think for me, it's probably one of the best cold opens of all of the Doctor
I was gonna
Christmas
say, I love how the open, it just immediately starts with a spaceship crashing, so it feels super futuristic-y, Amy and Rory in peril, and then it cuts to this, even though I think it is in the future, real like Victorian-y, grungy, grotty, like street level Christmas thing, and keep jumping between the two. And I do think that was the first Doctor Who Christmas special to really successfully do that. I mean, I guess we kind of had a similar thing with the Titanic episode with Voyage of the Damned, but I think that having this real peril, like space threat, oh my God, the companion's going to die, and then the like slow milling story of the Doctor and Kazran, I thought that was really, really cool. Another random childhood fact. I feel like in this episode, we're just going to be bringing a lot of fun facts, but they're going to be fun facts from our like memories and childhood.
Oh yeah, I've got weird facts to bring in here.
So me and my childhood friend Ellie, who is also a huge Doctor Who fan, we were in an English class together circa about 2011, and we had to write a poem. And we were paired together, and we were like, do you remember the line where the Doctor says to Kazran, better a broken heart than no heart at all? It's when Katherine Jenkins has been put in the freezer for the last time, and if he opens it up again, it's the last time she can come out before she dies.
Yeah,
and he's become really bitter, and it's how he's becoming the bitter old man, and he's talked about having a broken heart, and the Doctor says it's better to have a broken heart than no heart at all. And me and Ellie, this really stuck with us, and we wrote a poem with the title Better Broken Heart Than No Heart at All, and we wrote like a secret Doctor Who coded poem where we wrote like about having the love like a rose and things like that.
No.
And then we read it, and then someone was like, did you write a poem about Doctor Who? And we were like, no. We were like, no, it's about love. And like fully had like coded it about Doctor Who.
That's actually extremely sweet.
With retrospect, yeah. Do you want me to jump in with one of my favourite specials?
Yeah, go on. Name one of your faves.
So I also feel like you and me kind of come from this very much of the perspective of like growing up in the like mid-noughties watching Chris Rex and David Tennant's era when we were like the perfect age to be consuming that media. But one of my most comforting Doctor Who episodes in general, like if I'm ever having like a crappy day and I want to put on something I know that'll make me feel good, I put on The Runaway Bride.
Oh, that is a good one.
Runaway Bride 2006. Obviously, it was the first episode to introduce Donna Noble. I feel like it inadvertently set up so much stuff because Russell T Davies had built all of these plot points and characters that he then later brought back. I don't think he was intending that when he wrote the episode, but it was also the first episode of New Who where we were introduced to the concept of just like a brand new companion, but also like a one and done, where we didn't know that Donna was going to be able to come back. So it just seemed like she was the companion for the episode. And I just think it's so fun and funny. I love the Doctor and Donna's dynamic when she is constantly just barking about wanting to get back to the church and how he's a spaceman. And I think it's just so funny. I was so excited to see the return of the robot Santas. I love their design, how they sort of upped the structure of the face. I also love how it's quite clearly filmed in July and it looks very hot and everyone looks kind of like stuffy because they're all dressed as if it's winter.
Yeah, they sit on the rooftop, don't they, at Christmas time? Which must have been freezing.
Yeah.
I didn't ever think about that before.
They sit on there and Donna's got, she mentioned she's like, oh, I'm freezing. And the Doctor like puts his jacket on, but then he's quite comfortably sat in his shirt. And there's a lot of behind the scenes photos of them both in like sunglasses and stuff, which I find really funny.
Yeah.
But I think the Christmas baubles that fly off the tree and start bombing everyone, it's a really fun callback to the Christmas Invasion where Jackie's like, I'm going to get killed by a Christmas tree. And it just really feels good. I will say I don't think it necessarily is the most Christmassy Christmas special. I think there are more festive Christmas specials, but I think this one, maybe it's just with the time it came out, with what the episode's about. I also, and I'm not sure if you watched this, did you used to watch the Doctor Who proms on BBC?
Yes, of course. Absolutely. I mean, I could say a lot about these, but I miss them.
I miss them a lot too. And I mean, I know that you have so much love, obviously, for Marigold's music, and that's a whole other episode of itself. But I vividly remember watching the proms. I used to watch them on the DVD release, so they would often, on the tail end of a season, put the BBC proms on that. And I remember I think it must have been the first BBC proms, it was before the episode had aired for The Runaway Bride, and they showed the clip of the car chase where the TARDIS is chasing the taxi, which I also think is just one of the most amazing like chase scenes in Doctor Who. And the orchestra were live doing the brand new piece of music that Marigold had written for the episode, and they played that clip and they had the band doing it live. And then just at the cliffhanger where Donna's like, what about your friend Rose, did she trust you? He's like, yes, now jump. They then cut the visuals to black and you just hear the music, and it's so celebratory, and like you can tell that, you know, it's all going to be fine, but you're listening to the music and you're thinking about what it's going to be, and I like all of that together. I think it's just one of the most comforting episodes for me.
I was going to say that's one of my absolute favourite Doctor Who moments ever. And I think especially, you know, when you have those kids in front in the car and they're like cheering her on.
And they're cheering
like, her on, but they're silent. And there's obviously this like running joke. The TARDIS isn't really meant to be flown. So when they have to do kind of like actual like flying on a motorway, the way it spins, the way it's coming to like tug it with string, all of that's brilliant. The like physical comedy.
And then he has the fire extinguisher at the end to like shh it out.
Yeah. And then it's funny as well because like you just said, like we were the right age to have been the same age as those kids. So that was a bit like our kind of like, there's that meta moment where you're the audience and you're the people in the car. So it's I loved all that.
I love it. It's just one of my favorite episodes. But like I said, it's not the most festive. It's just one of my favorite episodes in general. So of course, it's one of my favorite festive Christmas episodes.
We are blinded by nostalgia, and that's okay.
Well, that's what this episode's about. And you know what? That's what Christmas is about.
It's what this podcast is about.
Literally.
Two people with no discerning critical thinking skills who love Doctor Who.
Go on, Alasdair. Give me another one of your favourites.
All right, another one of my favourites is controversial. A lot of people don't like this episode, and I really do. It's a real comfort episode for me, and I don't know why. So I really love The Time of the Doctor from 2013. So in this one, as the 11th Doctor's life comes to an end and his 12th life is about to begin, the Doctor faces some of his worst enemies together, the Daleks, the Cybermen, the Angels, the Silence, all in one go as he defends a town called Christmas. And what happens is there is a crack in a wall that opens up, and on the other side of that are the freshly saved Time Lords calling from Gallifrey basically asking the Doctor to say his name so they know it's safe to come through. And this begins the entire plot line going backwards through Matt Smith's era of why the Silence are trying to kill the Doctor and why there is a religious order saying silence must fall because the Doctor must never say his name so that Time Lords never come back and war doesn't break out. So it's quite meta. I don't think anyone followed that plot line because it was so complex and so hard to follow, but it is a really great episode and it's very warm and fuzzy and nice. Fun fact about this year, which is why it's so extraordinary that I found any positivity in this, is that the 2013 Christmas, I don't know if you remember this, was a really, really wet year and there were really bad floods in a lot of parts of the UK. And our area was one of those areas. And our house got knee-deep flooded that Christmas. Yeah.
I remember the floods. I remember seeing, but like I wasn't very badly affected. I think we were quite high up on a hill, so it wasn't too bad for us.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, guess what? On our little house in Fetcham, on our road, there is one house that is not built at a slight height, and it's our house. And everyone else along that road is on a slight incline, apart from ours. And there was that really, really bad rain overnight, and all the water started draining. And then what happened is I think they did something or other with floodgates, and the water started going back up. And through the morning, the water started coming up through the floor.
Is this Christmas Day?
This is the 23rd of December.
Oh, God.
And it was a disaster. I had to evacuate. We had to have the fire brigade come and put us in a canoe and take us to the other side of the road because the water...
In a canoe?
The road was a river, not a canoe, sorry. A lifeboat, a canoe would be
Wait,
road.
this is the first time you're telling me this story.
It's a crazy story. So there's a helicopter shot of my house with me on it carrying boxes we were watching that on Christmas Eve from a hotel.
So you spent Christmas Day in a hotel?
I spent Christmas and a few weeks after that in a hotel.
How is this the first time you're telling me that? I'm so sorry for we're gonna use this clip. Alasdair is on a call over there to me whilst I'm recording here. How is this the first time you're telling me this?
There's so many traumas in my life. I've simply bundled them.
You need to show me this clip. You need to show me this clip of you sitting on your house with boxes, the poor pauper, who then was sat in a hotel and really, really enjoyed the time of the
Now,
Doctor.
this is the thing. I have such warm memories of this time. Trauma.
That's nice.
And I'm like, oh my God, that was the winter that I got to have breakfast in a hotel every morning. I got a buffet every morning for Christmas. So your Christmas, did you go to a family member's house for Christmas dinner or did you have Christmas dinner in the hotel? You have to unlock the trauma. I don't remember where I went for my Christmas dinner. Oh, no, I do. Yes, a family friend gave us Christmas dinner.
Aww.
And that was good. But we did spend the rest of the time in the hotel. Anyway, then in the car on the way home on my phone, I start watching the Christmas special because we missed it. And I adored it. I loved it. I honestly thought it was so good. I thought it was so much fun. I thought the visuals were great as well at the start. You have all these spaceships massing around the planet. And I think there was something of a boosted CGI budget for the name of the Doctor, the day of the Doctor, the time of the Doctor. Those all look really slick.
They did. I feel like they really advertised it as a trilogy, the name, the time, and the day. And I do remember the shot of the Doctor. I think he'd already started aging up and he had the cane. And there's maybe, I think, explosions behind him and I think 2 silence behind him. And they say that the voiceover, the lady that does voiceover says something about how the Doctor had partnered with the Silence to battle the Cybermen or something, and there's 4 Silence walking up behind the Doctor and he's walking away from them. He's obviously not looking at them, so he doesn't even remember that they're there, but they're all walking behind him and he's just swinging his little cane and walking towards the Cyberman. I do think the wooden Cyberman was a really interesting addition, and unpopular opinion maybe, I really was not a fan of that era's Cyberman design. I thought it looked very plasticky. I didn't love all the curved metal. I thought it just looked a bit PVC, but I really, really liked the wooden Cyberman. I thought that was really clever.
Yeah, I agree.
And of course, there are so many Christmas and festive specials that we love. We genuinely just don't have time to talk about them all now. We will, on the podcast, talk about them all. We'll go through and do episodes and review. I think a few notable mentions of my favourites, other than my number 1 favourite, which I am saving to talk about. I have a little bit of a soft spot for The Doctor, the Widow and the Wardrobe. I do think it's not a particularly well-loved episode generally, but there's just something... It's one of those really Christmassy Christmas specials. I do love that one. again, not the most well-loved episode, but the next Doctor, I think, has merit. I like that it's a Victorian set episode. I think Victorian sort of Dickensian, that kind of era, I think works really well for Christmassy episodes. I feel like The Unquite Dead almost felt a bit like it was set at Christmas. It felt like a Christmas episode. But my number one all-time Christmas special, and I do think this is really proving that I am a victim of my own nostalgia, is The Christmas Invasion.
I totally agree. And I don't think this is a pure nostalgia thing, because I rewatched it in the summer this year and I think it holds up so well. Now, I didn't have time to look into this, but I'm sure they shifted the cameras they use between the main series 1 and the Christmas special, because there is a serious shift into HD.
Oh, they definitely would have.
Yeah, and it's honestly, this episode has aged so well. It's well worth looking again, because this one really holds up. A lot of series 1, you look at it and you're a bit like, okay. This one looks so nice. It honestly looks really good. And I mean, not to get stuck on the visuals, because I think it's also one of the ones with the most heart, the most humor. It is such a strong introduction for David Tennant. It secures him as the Doctor so fast, even though he spends a lot of it in a coma. His performance is so strong.
He's barely actually in the episode. He's only really properly in it for the last maybe like 15 minutes of the episode, but I think it is such a strong introduction to him. What I think this episode does really well is that it's one of the few Christmas specials in Doctor Who where you're not introducing a new companion or a new, well, I was going to say a new Doctor, of course you are introducing a new Doctor, but you're not introducing a new story, I'll say, because I feel like even, for example, in the time of the Doctor where it's still Matt Smith, it's still Clara, you're introducing her family and you're going to a new place and it feels like a whole new adventure. Whereas I feel like you're really continuing the story of the previous episode, the parting of the ways, and dealing with the aftermath of that. You really feel led into the next episode, New Earth, but then it's also very much its own, fully encompassing. You can watch this without having watched anything else. Christmas special. It's very Christmassy. It's very relatable. I love the dynamic of like Mickey and Jackie and what they want to do with Rose for Christmas and how she hasn't even really been thinking about Christmas. And like you said, it's just so funny as well. Like the memes of Jackie, I'm going to get killed by a Christmas tree. Like it's
get killed by a Christmas tree.
It's amazing. It's so good.
And I think the bit where he is awake at the end and he comes back from his cup of tea and he's like, so...
Did you miss me?
He's so...
charismatic.
He's so cocky. He's so charismatic. He's so swashbuckly.
Swashbuckly is a good word. I love when he is just like going around. He's like, oh, I know what I'm doing, but also I'm figuring myself out. And he's like, oh, I'm a new man. I don't know what I'm doing. And then he has this real like emotional moment with the Sycorax leader where he's like, you have to leave the humans alone, you know? I'm going to get up close to the mic for this. And he's like, the day we arrive on the planet, that blinking step into the sun. And then it's like, wait, hold on, no, that's the Lion King. Like, it's so funny.
That's the Lion King.
It's just so funny.
It's amazing. It's one of the best bits it's ever been. And as well, how Howard Apple then actually makes a return for the end and he chucks it to kind of hit the switch.
No, the Satsuma. The Satsuma is like, oh, that friend of your mother's, he does love his snacks.
Yes. And as well, we get a nice little flash of the split of, the vengeful, angry Time Lord. No second chances. I'm that sort of a man.
I think that was a really important part to add into it, because I feel like that could have... Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I've just realised. For the viewers who are listening to this podcast are going to have no sense of what I'm about to talk about. I was filming a bit of this podcast earlier and I had some figures out. I have a Sycorax figure I could have put out, and I have a regenerated 10th Doctor figure that I could have put out. And I didn't. I put out an Ood and a Celine. Do either of those say Christmas? No.
I'm so sorry.
Oh my God. But no, it's just so festive.
You know what's surprising about this as well is I would have thought this was an easy winner on IMDb for best ratings. This actually comes in at number 8. So it's actually not even in the top 5.
So on Screen Rant, this came in at number 2, second to A Christmas Carol. That came as number 1 on Screen Rant.
Nostalgia may be doing some heavy lifting for us, but I mean, like I say, I watched it quite recently and I really think it holds up.
I was shocked that The Runaway Bride on Screen Rant came, I think it was like 6th to last or something. I do, like I said, I do acknowledge that it isn't the most Christmassy Christmas special, but I love it, and I do know that we're coming at it from a nostalgia point of view.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I think it's an ooey gooey squishy, nostalgic, lovely one.
One thing that I don't want to dwell on it too much because this is such a nice sort of Christmassy episode and there's so much nice stuff to talk about. A Christmas special I really, really don't like is the return of Dr. Mysterio, the Peter Capaldi Christmas special from 2016. I really don't like it. This is one of the few, I think this was for me a period where I started not drifting away from Doctor Who. I still watched every single one of like Capaldi's episodes, but I was like, oh, I'm worried that Doctor Who might not be for me anymore. And I felt like it was just a real rip-off of like trying to cash in on the Marvel fanfare that was happening. And much as I sort of joke about how The Runaway Bride isn't the most Christmassy Christmas special, this one has like absolutely nothing to do with Christmas. It like really doesn't. I know that it's like in New York, it's New York City on Christmas Eve, but like it's just all about this superhero, and it just felt incredibly childish. And I feel like Doctor Who is always so good because it strikes the perfect balance of being so enjoyable for kids. Like obviously it's meant to be, and it should be enjoyable for kids, but it's a family show and the family should enjoy it and the adults should enjoy it. And I just remember watching it and I was like, I don't think this is good. And I will be really interested to do the rewatch of this episode because I genuinely, it's one of the few Doctor Who episodes I have never, ever rewatched. I watched it once and I was like, don't want to watch that again. So I'd be interested to go back to that one.
For me, this is one of the episodes that, as well, I don't remember fondly at all. I remember at the time thinking it wasn't great. And I think I'll be interested to rewatch this with you. I don't want to cover that as a horrible, bitter fan who's like, it's not as good as it used to be. But
like me, like me.
But I think potentially what could explain this. I mean, Stephen Moffat's era was known as, you know, the fantasy era, right? Where that thematically, that's how it felt.
Yeah,
it was
fairy tale, very fairy tale.
It was fantasy. Fairy tale, that's what I wanted. It was the fairy tale era. And I think combining that with Christmas maybe goes overdrive if you're not careful. And there are points where I think it maybe veers very close to cheesy. And I think in this one, it probably oversteps a little bit. It feels kind of like painfully American. Sorry, American listeners, but it does. And I think we've said before, it felt a little bit like it was trying to cash in on
Marvel mania,
the Marvel craze that was, you know, especially big at the time.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
But like I said, I mean, I'd be really interested in rewatching this episode. Doctor Who as a whole, with its Christmas specials and obviously the festive New Year specials for Jodie's era, I mean, they all do hold such a sort of like close, warm, fuzzy place for me. And I don't know about you, I'm assuming it's the same, but I remember Doctor Who not just in the Christmas special, but in what I was like asking for as a kid. Like I would ask for the latest annual. I would ask for the latest. They used to do these storybooks. I would ask the latest one of those. They had. Do you remember the Aliens versus Allies, Monsters versus Aliens books?
Oh yeah,
those ones.
Yeah.
I'd ask for those, and also like I have this really vivid memory. My aunt called me maybe in like mid-November, well, she was on the phone to my dad, and she was asking what I wanted for Christmas, and he was like, "Oh, he'll want Doctor Who toys, but maybe I'll put you on the phone to him, and he can tell you." And I was on the phone, and I was like, "Hi, Auntie Jan," and she's like, "Hi, Samuel. What do you want for Christmas?" And I was like, "Okay." So I want the Cyberman action figure, but I don't want the one with the gun on its arm because I have the one with the gun on its arm. I want the one without the gun on its arm. And then another one where the handles on the top are black. And I don't have the one where the handles are black, but I do have the one where the handles are silver. So I don't want that.
Oh my God, you little brat.
I was such a brat. In my head, I was like, this is so clear cut and obvious. And she was like, what's a Cyberman?
You were just being specific, sweetheart. You were just being specific.
I think I was just being specific. But I mean, like, I would love to, on the future episode of the podcast, do like a whole episode talking about like Doctor Who merch. Because I feel like there's been like some wacky ones. Like, I'd like to talk about like wacky ones. Also ones from like the classic era. So like what the Who fans of like the 60s, 70s, 80s would get.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to talk about that. There's a lot of merch that unfortunately I've decided I now want. Having done this podcast, it has thrown me in the deep end.
Of nostalgia.
With the merch. So, Sam, let me give you a few fun facts before we wrap up.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that they considered and planned a Christmas special for the Sarah Jane Adventures called Miracle on Bannerman Road, planned to precede the 5th series?
No? Like, that's so crazy.
Well, they were planning to do one. It would have been a 2011 Christmas special, and the story would have been based on A Christmas Carol, and it would have featured Sarah Jane Smith being shown the past, present, and future of her life. And they briefly considered having Tom Baker reprise his role as the 4th Doctor. And this was not long before he appeared as the curator in The Day of the Doctor.
Oh, that would have been amazing.
Yeah. And the story would have ended with, do you remember the character Sky Smith in the final series?
I remember.
It would have ended with the 11th Doctor dropping off a baby Sky Smith saying he couldn't explain anymore.
That would have been really cool. Because I will say, and I do think we need to look into Sarah Jane Adventures for the podcast as well, because again, so much nostalgia on that, but I would love to watch those. I remember thinking the introduction to Sky was a little bit like haphazard. And I when I was watching it at the time, I was like, I don't really care about the introduction of this. I think that would have been a really fun introduction for her character. I think this would have been a really fun way to keep... I remember thinking that like Sarah Jane and the 11th Doctor was like a weird dynamic just because it wasn't David Tennant. And I think that would have been a cool way to like bring him into it. That would have been really, really fun. I'm really sad they didn't do that.
Yeah.
I wonder why.
I know, wouldn't have been good.
So we briefly touched on it earlier, but during the first run of Doctor Who, it was between 63 and obviously 89, there were no Christmas specials of Doctor Who. However, during one of William Hartnell's, the first Doctor's episodes, he was doing a series, The Daleks Master Plan, where obviously they would have serials that would span multiple weeks rather than like a two-parter. It would be, say, 6 20-minute episodes that would span one serial. And it so happened that that serial was going over Christmas Day and New Year's Day. So they had the whole episode. It was kind of normal. And then the Doctor and the companions came back in the TARDIS, and then William Hartnell's Doctor came out with a tray of champagne and was like, it's time to celebrate. Do you remember? It's Christmas. And they were kind of like, oh, yeah, it is. And they all take their glass and cheers. And then in the only time this has ever happened in the history of Doctor Who, the Doctor turns directly to the audience who are watching this on Christmas Day. And he says, incidentally, a happy Christmas to all of you at home. And like cheers as the audience.
Wow. I've got one more fact.
Wow. Crazy. So yeah, I was always wondering why they never did festive specials in the classic era, but I do wonder if that maybe like put a nail in the coffin at least for a bit.
I fear it did. I fear it did.
Yeah.
Oh, that's put me right in the festive spirit. And I think it is safe to say the Christmas specials have had quite an impact on the franchise. We've seen lots happen inside them. We've had a lot of important plot points, new companions, new incarnations of the Doctors, and all of this has been vital to series continuity. They've often been the most watched episodes, and they've been immensely comforting.
Exactly. And I do think, like, we can't go without saying this is the first year since Doctor Who came back that we're not having any kind of festive special. No Christmas, no New Year's, no nothing. And it will be missed. I do think I'll be whipping out the DVDs or the iPlayer and popping on the Christmas Invasion maybe around the festive time.
Slay. Slay.
Slay, say slay.
You get it? Do you get it? Slay.
Ho, ho, ho. But thank you for listening, dear listener. We are very grateful to have you stick with us. These episodes come out every single Thursday on all good podcast services. You can also then retroactively listen to the episodes on our YouTube channel at Wholala Pod and keep the conversation going on our Twitter and Instagram. What's your favourite Christmas special or festive special? Do you prefer the New Year's specials? What do you think? Do you prefer the slot on New Year's, Christmas? What do you like?
Does anyone prefer New Year's? Really? But yes, head on over, jingle our bells, and slide on into our DMs.
It's Chrysler. Happy Chrysler.
Happy Chrysler.
Thank you so much, guys. It's been amazing, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week, girls.
Bye.